I came out here planning to only use what I brought with me in my bag, but to simulate a survival situation where I came out for a day hike and I got lost in the woods. Now on this hike, I came across survival items like a tent, a headlamp, a pair of pliers, scissors, several different ground stakes, a metal tube, and a pry bar. This just goes to show that if you keep your eyes open and you're aware of your surroundings, the chances of survival go up. And I was stuck for the evening, and I wanted to create a place for myself that was safe, and by safe I mean dry. This would be the place I would pick, and the first thing I would do would be to pull out my survival tarp. If you didn't have a tarp with you, one of those emergency ponchos that you find in any standard survival kit, the really thin plastic ones, it would do just fine in a pinch. But I bring this one with me because it's just a little bit more sturdy, and it's made for this job. So I start by draping it over the log and finding the highest point that I can bring it to, where I can still stake my corners at an arch here. So I would have to bring it down quite a bit more. Now, as you saw earlier in the film, I found stakes at another person's camp. But out of respect for other people and other survivalists, I returned those items to their camp, and I'm going to use the ones that I brought with me. It's always a good idea to bring metal stakes with you because of the fact that they are more effective and easier to deploy than having to create stakes of your own out of wood that might be brittle and not work well for the job, especially in tougher, harder ground. It's always a good idea to bring at least 6 stakes. Standard 4, 1 for each corner and 2 for a back. It's not a lot of room, but it'll do. Now the next thing I would do is I would find a way to get the fire going for warmth, to purify water, and to cook food. With me, inside my fire kit that I bring out as a part of survival, I have my Uberleben flat pack twig stove. With this item here, I can quickly deploy a fire housing unit that runs off of minimal fuel and the source of twigs. There you go, just like that, a fireplace. Also inside my fire kit, I do bring an additional steel plate in case I need to clear a spot out from my fireplace and to provide a level piece of ground that I know will not be burnt. Unfortunately right now, almost everything that we're going to find out here is going to be saturated because of the recent rains. But in order to find dry wood, you're going to look for whatever kind of fallen logs that you can, and then try to process them down to their core where they'll be the least saturated. Like this piece here looks like it has some potential. I see dry wood. Let's go down and process this. Now, another piece of gear that I recommend that you carry in your survival kit is a small folding saw. I use a Gombe Silky. It's easy to pack, fits in my pack, really is small, lightweight. Now what you can do, once you've processed your stick down into smaller rounds, you can separate off the bark and then start to quarter these down. All right, for this one, I'm going to use my knife instead. And still with the baton method. And like I said, you're just going to split the wood down to try to remove the outer more saturated pieces and get down to the dry wood, or the drier wood. As long as you get down to that center core there, it should be dry enough for you to get a fire started, and then you can use the moist wood to keep the fire going. Now, as you can see from just those few little rounds, I processed a fair amount of wood to get my twig stove started. Something else that I bring with me is something called fat wood, which is just a piece of wood that has been heavily saturated by the tree's sap when a limb has been cut and it's been filled to try to fix an injury for the tree. What happens is you get an amber colored piece of wood that has dried sap inside of it, and this can be used as an accelerant for your fire. I'll show you what I mean right now. All right, so how you can use this piece of fat wood to get a fire started is you can scrape down shavings into a pile. Gather them up and ignite them with a spark from a ferro rod. This one that I'm carrying right here is from the company Outdoor Element. It has a built-in survival whistle, a ceramic striking rod, and a storage unit for fire tinder. I'm going to use this as an example after I show you how to use the natural fire starter. Because it's heavily saturated with pitch, it'll burn hotter and longer than a standard piece of wood. But in this particular survival situation, I'm going to show you how to use a man-made tinder like one of these fire plugs. So right now, I'm going to tear up this fire plug to get it so it can catch a spark from my ferro rod. And then the goal will be to get a spark to drop into that pile right there. Now I'm going to purposefully put this piece of fat wood in here to get it to accelerate, just like I did with the shavings of fat wood. Continuing to build my fire with my twigs. control. I'm going to turn the opening back away from my opening of my shelter. Right, so in the situation that I've run out of water and I had to collect some from the river, here's what I would do to purify my water. Once I have a fire going, I would use my nesting cup from my canteen. And this is why one of the 5 C's is containers. It's important to have something to be able to carry your supplies in, and most importantly, to be able to purify water. So I would take my steel container, put that right over the fire here, and take the water that I collected from the stream, pour it right in there. Little pine needles never hurt anybody. In fact, pine needles are used for an antioxidant when you boil them down inside of a tea. If you can't find a way to boil your water, carrying around a small personal water filtration device is always a good alternative.
We'll get that lid on there.
While this is boiling, I just wanted to take a second to thank you guys for joining me on this episode today. And I hope you learned a little something about situational awareness and how to stay safe in a survival situation and what you might want to bring with you on your next hiking trip. Lastly, a word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you in part by Malone Knife and Tool Company. American-made tools for outdoorsmen. Shop online at maloneknives.com.
Bushcraft Bodybuilder out. Stay wild, stay strong.